In Kazakhstan, the craft developed over the centuries, leaving a legacy of unique products of artisans, amazing wealth of artistic imagination, and the perfection of form. A respect for one's heritage, traditional cultural values, these are the main tasks of the current generation. The history of folk crafts is a record of creative research and the discoveries of folk artists. The art of the Kazakh people, their national traits and traditions, were formed and perfected for centuries. Folk art stores in itself a historical memory and national heritage. Masters of folk art have bit by bit collected and continue to collect the experience of previous generations, multiplying them and transferring their skills from one generation to the next. Felt is the oldest material that nomads use. It was essential for people's survival in the most difficult natural conditions. It helped to withstand rain, wind, and cold. The manufacturing of felt, or felting, is perhaps one of the ancient methods of processing wool that arose before our Common Era. Its history is so profound that it is difficult to say exactly how and when felting developed. Probably even the ancient people began to make felt from wool of wild animals. But in such wool, the fibers had a low ability to compact and to bind together. Therefore, the wide production and use of felt began only when people themselves began to breed sheep, and it was more than 10,000 years ago. Since then, the wool of sheep has become the main raw material. For many people, especially for Kazakhs, felt was one of the main types of textiles that served people throughout their life, helping people who were able to install not only well-known yurts and making carpets, but also a lot of other conveniences and necessary things, such as bags, clothing, and shoes. Ayjan Bekkulova is a master of felt, with whom we were fortunate enough to visit, and she makes incredibly interesting and beautiful products from felt. Accessories and toys, as well as modern dresses. The list goes on and on. So what is felt? Felt is a material made by the felting of wool. Wool is the only material from which you can make felt, and the sheep's fur is best for this. Woolen fibers consist of keratin and fibrous protein, with soft, elastic fibers which retain heat and do not allow moisture to pass through. Sheep's wool has a unique property. The integumentary hair has a scaly layer. The cuticle, due to it, and the wooden fibers adhere to each other under the influence of hot water, steam, pressure, and friction. This is the basic principle of felting. This is how felt is made. And since the wool of the wild sheep does not have a cuticle, the first felt could not have appeared before sheep were domesticated. Then horses and sheep were also domesticated, which helped to graze large flocks of sheep. It was from this time that felting became one of the main occupations of the economic activity of the Kazakh people. Thanks to the discovery of scientists, it is known that in ancient times, Kazakhs wove felt of various varieties and qualities, from wool and down of sheep. The natural color of felt is white or black, depending on the color of the sheep, but often felt was colored. The main raw material is sheep's wool, with a small addition of lamb, goat, or camel wool. The most appropriate type of felt is felt made from the sheep's wool of autumn cut. On average, 1 kilogram of wool is removed per one sheep. and taking into account the fact that for the creation of a piece of felt covering one yurt, the size required is to trim no less than 150 to 200 sheep. It is possible to imagine the amount of work performed and the time required to accumulate such a quantity of raw materials. In the processes associated with riding felt, mostly women were involved in this activity. It was a complex and time-consuming process. Sheep's wool was attributed to magical properties, so they believed that felt did not always roll down if any elements of the ritual are not observed. In important national rituals, only white felt was used without additional mixtures of other shades. The Kazakhs raised the newly elected Khan on white felt, and the Khan's yurt was covered only with white felt. Felt remained one of the most necessary materials in the life of Kazakh people, and for a nomad, it was impossible to think about life without it. For the manufacturing of felt, very little is needed: human hands, water, sheep's wool, creativity, imagination, and desire. But will we be able to preserve what has been inherited from our ancestors? Over the past few years, the art of felt has been experiencing a second birth. Once man-made felt production was never interrupted and almost never changed over the past centuries. Only now, from the categories of simple craft, it has become a rank of high art. We were lucky to get acquainted with such a unique master of felt. Having crossed the threshold of the workshop, we immediately felt the magic of creativity and the imagination reigning here. The hostess of the workshop, Ayjan Bekkulova, has dedicated her life to the Kazakh crafts. She zealously preserves national traditions and passes them on to her students. The life and creative path of the master is rich and diverse. As chairman of the Union of Craftsmen and a member of the Union of Artists of Kazakhstan, she manages programs for the development and revival of folk arts and crafts. Ayjan is a multiple prize winner of international exhibitions and competitions. She is also the author of a number of publications in art catalogs, books, and textbooks. Gathering and multiplying skills and knowledge, she makes invaluable contributions to the development of Kazakh culture. We found the master at work performing what Kazakh women have been doing since ancient times, making felt carpets. Let's see how the sheep wool turns into a man-made product. The procedure for making felt is divided into several stages and is called felting. The process itself is based on the entanglement of wool fibers among themselves. When making felt, the master uses a technique of wet felting. It turns out that no matter how carefully the colors of wool were chosen and laid out, felt still falls a little in its own way. Therefore, each felt master adapts himself to the already known techniques, using a mixture of techniques to create one product and to devise their own methods of felting. Ayjan told us that the felt in the cut represents a homogeneous and compact mass, and that it is difficult to distinguish between individual hairs in it. It's easier to disentangle the most durable fabric than it is to disentangle felt. Such a strong connection depends, on one hand, on the inflections peculiar to the hair, and on the other hand, on the presence of microscopic scales and barbs on its surface. When the felt is caught, the curls of some of the hairs are caught by the curls of others, just as the notches of some enter the cavities of others. These two types of communication are responsible for two major qualities of felt: their elasticity and strength. The flexibility of the hair determines the elasticity of the felt, and the roughness its strength. Felt made of fine wooled sheep has a high degree of tortuosity, but rather smooth, it is extremely soft, but not very durable. Felt from straight wool with a rough surface differs with more durability. When they want to combine both of these qualities into one felt, the master takes a mixed material consisting of sheep's wool and the hair of other animals. and the first stage consists of preparing the wool for felting. First, the master sorts the wool. After all, wood is a mixture of fluff, axial and transitional fibers differing in length, flexibility, and other features. The more fluff is in the fur, the more valuable it is. You need to carefully select the quality of the wool. Now you need to comb and prepare the hair. On a small carding machine, the master spreads the wool into small portions in a drum, reminiscent of a hair comb with iron teeth. The carding procedure begins, and it is completed only when the wool does not become uniform and soft, literally hair to hair. Then the master proceeds to the next step. The prepared wool is laid out in thin layers on a flat surface, 6 to 7 centimeters thick, and in several layers. Carefully, layer by layer, the master spreads the wool, crushing it with her hands so that it fits more smoothly. The main background of the future carpet is laid out first. The art here is precisely in the correct layout of the wool and its uniform felting. For future ornamentation, felt had to be painted, and we got acquainted with this process. In the enameled container, the necessary amount of water is poured, in which a special paint is dissolved. The felt is dropped into the paint and is boiled for several hours. Ai-jen paints felt only with special natural dyes. Since ancient times, color for a person carried a certain symbolism, which was reflected in folk ornaments. Nature is rich with bright and juicy colors. As a human being, we also want to decorate our products, painting them in all sorts of colors. And our ancestors surprisingly could get almost any color. In general, the dyes were of mineral or vegetable origin. The juice of plants, fruits, and roots were used. For the future carpet, the master colored felt in green and yellow. After completing this process, she squeezes and dries the wool. Now for the colored wool, it is possible to create necessary ornaments. And here the colored wool is laid out on a flat surface and is collected in the same way as the main background. Further, with the help of the prepared patterns of ornaments made of dense but flexible material, the master cuts out the felt elements from felt. If the felt is more dense, then the master uses a sharp knife instead of a pair of scissors. It is interesting that the ornament is cut with a solid pattern, and thus two blanks are obtained, which are used later. Any piece of felt is valuable and is used in work, as the production of felt is long and time-consuming. You can also make a variety of braids of wool by twisting the fibers between them. All of this will be in the future decoration of the carpet. The subsequent process is called the primary roll. This is the most important. After the layout, the master covers the wool with cloth and moistens it with water, crushing it with her hands so that it would fade evenly. You need to try not to move the layers, otherwise the carpet pattern may be distorted. Then, from one corner, the master bends a coat of wool and rolls it into a roll. After the first felting, Ai-jen unfolds the canvas. She carefully examines it because at this stage it is possible to correct a drawing or ornament, since the coupling of the fibers is not yet strong enough. Felt carpets are monochromatic and patterned, and the patterns are often given rather intricate forms, representing trees, animals, or abstract geometric elements. In the peculiarities of the folk ornaments and its favorite color scale, national concepts of beauty are revealed, closely related to the history of the people, their way of life, living conditions, and the peculiarities of their culture and character. The Kazakh products often have abstract geometric elements, which skillfully echo with vegetative ornaments. Ai-jen also chose such an ornament for her carpet. She decorates it with a system of ornaments in the form of intersecting lines and hook-shaped elements made of green and yellow felt. The rolling process is repeated many times and is called the rolling of felt. If the felt does not absorb water evenly, then the master can add water, and if the liquid is in excess, then the master removes the excess. It is very important that the water would be soaked up by all the layers evenly. This stage is very difficult, since the felt is rolled with elbows, and this process lasts until the felt becomes homogeneous. When the process of manufacturing of the product is completed, we can see the man-made unique carpet. This ancient technology, with ornaments and even the chosen color scale of the carpet, gives it the appearance of an ancient product, as if it appeared from the depths of centuries. There was such an incredible sense of connection with the past, with our roots, and with which we inherited from our great steppe ancestors. The appeal of folk art, which expresses artistic and spiritual ideas of the people, contributes to the revival of a person's feelings of national pride. Therefore, it is so important to preserve our cultural heritage and to pass on these skills and abilities to our future generations. Folk craftsmen for centuries have used secrets of craftsmanship, artistic images and plots that they have inherited from the most experienced craftsmen. The old masters have taught young people the arts of how to weave patterned cloth, sew clothes, and make items made of clay or metal. From generation to generation, the traditions of artistic creativity have been preserved. Behind every national master is a collective experience of many generations. It is in the work of artisans that the imaginative perception of the world and the high spirituality of the people is concealed. Without leaving the framework of traditions, the master always takes a creative approach to his work. A national master is always a professional because he must perfectly master the traditional methods of making products. We will talk about one such unique master in our next program.